blueprint for what came next. There was no existing book that I could pick up and use as a model for what I was trying to create. I wasn't compiling previously published stories or asking writers to submit pieces for an anthology. I was creating something from the ground up. I was interviewing people about their lives. I wanted to know what Africa meant to them. I wanted to hear about the experiences that had changed them, the places they had travelled, the people they had met, the work they were doing, and the moments that had stayed with them. For some people, Africa was their birthplace. For others, it was a place they had travelled to, worked in, fallen in love with, or eventually made their home. Their connections to the continent were as individual as their stories. At the beginning, I created a list of around 50 questions. I would select and adapt the questions depending on the person I was interviewing and their particular relationship with Africa. There was no rigid questionnaire that everyone had to answer because I didn't want every story to sound the same. I had to find the people. I had to work out how to approach them. I had to research their backgrounds. I had to develop questions. I had to conduct the interviews. And I had to build relationships and earn people's trust. I had to gather photographs and other material. And then I had to work out how all of these individual conversations and experiences could eventually become a coherent book. I had never done anything on that scale before. There was no handbook telling me how to do it. There was no established publishing model I could simply follow. And as far as I could find, there was no book already published that brought together this breadth of original voices and experiences about Africa in the way I was envisioning. So I learned as I went. I started searching for people through Instagram and Facebook. I followed leads, made connections, sent messages, and reached out to people whose stories caught my attention. One person led to another. Among the first people I interviewed was a woman who had married a Maasai warrior and was living in Tanzania. Another was a wildlife photographer from Zimbabwe. Each conversation opened another door, and those first few interviews were enough to make me realize that I had found something truly special. I was completely inspired by the stories I was hearing. The more people I spoke to, the more I wanted to know. Every interview introduced me to another perspective on Africa and another person whose experience was completely different from the one before. The project began to snowball, and then it began to take on a life of its own.